What's up, y'all? I'm here with my hair and a little ponytail in my witchy corner, and I'm going to be talking about aspects in astrology. So if you haven't already, please check out my astrology playlist. I go over Western, Vedic, Draconic, and so many other different cultures, forms of astrology. So, aspects in astrology pertain to Western, Vedic, and Draconic astrology, and your Western and Vedic aspects will be the same if you're using the same house systems. I usually use equal house systems for Western, Vedic, and Draconic. So your Western and Vedic are going to be the same because everything is off a few degrees with Vedic astrology. It just kind of shifts a bit. But with Draconic astrology, it takes your north node and puts it at 0 degrees Aries, so your whole chart shifts accordingly. So the aspects will be different. Okay, so I'm just going to go over, conjunctions, oppositions, sextiles, trines, squares, all of this stuff. Those are just some of the major ones, but I have notes here on things like noviles and quindeciles. So please look in the timestamps if you'd like to go to a certain aspect to learn more about it. These are major and minor aspects in astrology. So first things first, I'm going to be talking about conjunctions. We have to understand that the zodiac wheel is 360 degrees, right? Because it's a circle. So with conjunctions, they are 0 degrees apart. This means the planets are right on top of each other in a birth chart, okay? So it's not really a challenging or a harmonious aspect, which is usually the two categories aspects fall in. This one is neutral, okay? Because it doesn't make things more challenging and it doesn't really make things easier. It just kind of is what it is, okay? They're right on top of each other. They're not fighting to get along, and they're not, working together in a certain way. They're just kind of both right there. So it's a focus point in your life, these two planets. And it's a union of energy and a concentration point, a point of focusness, okay? Alright, getting into oppositions. So this is more challenging because it's when planets are 180 degrees apart. They're right across from each other on the birth chart wheel, wherever that is, okay? And the two planets involved in this opposition are just like kind of agitated, kind of fighting to balance things out. It's not as aggressive as like a square or something like that, because you can really make oppositions, you can change them, you can flow that energy fairly well. You just have to work on it, okay? It's not the most challenging aspect, but it's not an easy one, okay? They're trying to work together, and this it has Saturn vibes to it, because it's like your responsibility to even these out if you can. Alright, and then squares are when planets are 90 degrees apart on a birth chart wheel. So if there's 4 of them, it makes a square, okay, because they're 90 degrees apart. And this aspect is challenging. It's probably the most challenging one to have, but if you don't have any squares, you are not as interesting of a person, and you're just kind of bland. So it is good to have some squares in your birth chart, don't get me wrong, but if it's just a random day, and moon is squaring sun, that's not gonna be the best day ever. It could be, but probably not, okay? Because these energies have a lot of tension. Think of flowing energy, and there's just two things 90 degrees apart. It's just not very harmonious. They're fighting, they're trying to work it out, they're not having a good time. and it's Mars vibes, okay? So very aggressive with each other. So next I'm going to talk about a trine, which is harmonious, one of the most harmonious aspects. And this would form a triangle if there were 3 planets trining, but it's when they're 120 degrees apart on the birth chart wheel. And, they're just flowing comfortably, okay? So it's Jupiter vibes. So this is like philosophical. This is blessings, right? And they're just a nice distance away. They can just like keep this energy flowing. Triangles are a very harmonious shape, and it works good together. It's something that comes naturally. If you have a trine in your chart, this comes naturally to you. Whatever these planets are, the vibe of them comes naturally to you. All right. So sextile, probably the most harmonious aspect that there is. All right, and this is when planets are 60 degrees apart on a birth chart wheel, and it's usually almost exactly 2 zodiac signs away. So say if you have something 0 degrees Sag and 0 degrees Aquarius, that would be 60 degrees apart. That's a trine. Or that's a sextile, I'm sorry. Yeah, if it was like 4 zodiac signs apart, then it would be a trine. But 2 would be a sextile because zodiac signs are 30 degrees each. So they're fairly close on the wheel, and they're just far enough apart that this energy flows harmoniously. And I hope you guys understand when I go like this and this. If you can just kind of visualize if points were on a wheel and energy was trying to flow, if it feels harmonious or not. It makes sense to me. I'm hoping that it makes sense to you as well, okay? So sextiles have, the vibes of Venus. So very flowing and creative, and this is just a very productive aspect to have, okay? Sextiles are great. It's something that comes naturally to you, but it's very noticeable, more so than a trine, okay? So a semisextile is pretty harmonious, just you won't be able to tell as much as a sextile. It's when planets are 30 degrees apart, so 1 zodiac sign apart on the wheel. So, it's working harmoniously, but you probably won't notice it, okay? It's a very creative placement and gives you lots of opportunities with those planets. All right. So next I want to talk about a quincunx. So this is when planets are 150 degrees apart on the wheel. And, it's not really harmonious. It's more challenging or neutral. I would say it's more challenging because it can cause a lot of stress in those areas of life, whatever planets are involved, okay? You're going to feel like you can never do something good enough, and it just puts pressure and kind of an unwanted focus on the energy of those planets. All right, and then a quintile. So this sounds a lot like a quincunx, but it's very different, okay, because this is a very harmonious aspect, and it's when planets are 27 degrees apart on the zodiac wheel, and it brings out natural talents, okay? Whatever planets are involved, you're going to be good at solving those problems. This is going to be something that comes naturally to you, but it's going to be more of a talent. It's going to be more exaggerated than a sextile or a trine. So this is probably the most harmonious minor aspect because most people don't consider these ones, everything that's following. They're not major aspects, okay? They're more minor aspects. But if you're including that, this is probably the most harmonious because it brings out natural talents, okay? All right. So a biquintile is also very harmonious. It means pretty much the same thing as a quintile, but this is when planets are 144 degrees apart on the zodiac wheel. And, it brings out talents, and you're going to be good at solving whatever problems arise with those planets. Alright, a semiquintile or a decile is also very harmonious. Okay, it can be a decile, a tridecile, any of those, you know, because there's lots of different prefixes or suffixes that you can add on to, you know, these words. So a decile or a tridecile. Alright, so a semiquintile or a decile is when planets are 36 degrees apart on the wheel, and a tridecile is when they are 108 degrees apart on the wheel. They both mean pretty much the same thing, and it's like a weaker version of a quintile or a biquintile, so this brings out hidden talents as well. Alright, now for a more challenging aspect, a semisquare, which we've all been waiting for, right? No, not really. Maybe. But this is, you know, half of a square, so 45 degrees apart on the wheel. And whatever planets are involved, it's like a square, so there's tension. They're, you know, not working very well together, but it's not as bad as a square. Alright. So, sesquisquares and sesquiquadrates are also pretty challenging. This is when planets are 135 degrees apart on the wheel, and it's like a square, but it's more like a semi-square because it's not as noticeable, okay? It indicates conflict that someone will probably try to ignore because it's not this big square issue. It's a sesquiquadrate or a sesquisquare. So whatever, we're not going to talk about it, right? Alright, so a septile, a biseptile, and a triseptile are all very harmonious aspects. Okay, so a septile is 51.26 degrees, very specific. A biseptile is 103 degrees, and then a triseptile is 154 degrees. Alright, so a septile is 1/7 away on the zodiac wheel if you broke it into 7 parts, okay? The 51.26 degrees is that 1/7. And 7 is associated with spirituality. So if you have a septile, a biseptile, or a triseptile, then those planets are going to be very spiritual to you, and they're going to bring out these inspiring feelings, and just very deep spiritual, intellectual feelings with the energy of those planets. Alright, a novile, a nonile, or a nonagon are pretty harmonious. Some people consider them neutral, but I would say that they're harmonious, okay? And it's when planets are 40 degrees apart. It's 1/9, okay, of a wheel. And, you know, it kind of signifies the end of one phase and beginning of a new phase. It has very much so vertex vibes to it, okay? Hopefully you know what the vertex in astrology is. It's, you know, like the turning point. So a nonile, novile, nonagon, they are all turning points in your life, and they really signify when you're on the right path. Like when you see lots of 9s, 999, you know, you're on the right path. If you have a nonile, you're on the right path, okay? And it's a turning point. It's the beginning of a new phase. Very much so new moon vibes. Alright, and last, but it might be least, okay? Quindecile. So this is challenging. Alright, and it's 24 degrees apart, when planets are 24 degrees apart, or when they are 165 degrees apart on the wheel. Alright, because if you take 360 degrees divided by 15, you get 24. Or if you take that 15 and you multiply it by 11, you get 165. That's the math behind these calculations. Alright, and it's called the fatal and the natal. You gotta throw some humor in there. Because it represents obsession of these energies, okay? Whatever planets are involved, you are obsessed with the energy of. And it gets to the point of like losing reality. Like psychopaths have a quindecile in their chart, and if you have one of these, do not worry, okay? It does not signify absolute mental health issues. It just signifies that you are obsessed with the energy of those planets, and you need to kind of work through that. If you have Venus and Mars in a quindecile, you know, if they're 24 degrees or 165 degrees apart in your chart, you are going to have to work through your aggressive behavior in relationships. That's just an example. You know, I didn't really want to give an example for all of these, but that's just one so you can kind of understand that better, because it is so severe, and, you know, the word obsessive is a pretty strong word. So I wanted to give a little explanation of that. I hope you guys enjoyed. These are almost all of the aspects in astrology that are noticed as of today on the internet, okay? But you can come up with your own aspects. If you are an astrologist, if you study astrology and you study people's natal charts and you study what's going on in the sky with what's happening down on Earth now, you might come up with more aspects, okay? I agree with these aspects. I've looked through all of them in certain natal charts, and I agree with these. In the future, maybe I'll come up with some aspects that no one else has discovered yet, and maybe you will too. So I am super glad that you watched this video and that you're so into astrology that you are including the aspects and not just the planets and their signs, because that's great to know what sign your Uranus and your Neptune and your Pluto are in, you know, and all your asteroids if you don't. But once you add in the aspect of aspects, it totally shifts things and it opens you up to all these new horizons in astrology. So thanks for watching. Check out my astrology playlist if you would like an astrology report. Oh my god, I believe I have the most in-depth ones, and I don't want to hype myself up. I'm really not trying to, but I don't know anyone else who includes all of the different cultures that I include in my astrology reports, okay? Because I go over your aspects, and not just your planetary aspects. I go over, you know, your important points and your asteroids, which are also important, okay? I go over your harmonic configurations, which I talk about a little bit in my Vedic astrology video, because I kind of compared it to Western. This was a video I did years ago, and I talk about harmonic configurations, which you can use for Western, Vedic, and Draconic astrology. Alright, I'm done talking now. Thank you guys. I love you. Love and light, and the hybrid children are coming soon.